the Minister of Public Service. I don't know if that is the worst speech that I've heard in the decades I've followed Parliament, but I was more disappointed in the minister because I expected more of the minister. And I don't know her personally, and I'm sure her family and friends think she's a wonderful person. But what was portrayed yesterday, I think as members of parliament, we could and we should do better. There's always a place for politics. There's always a place for showing that you know somebody's personal information. There's always a place for that. But when we stand here in the National Assembly, it is my honest opinion that we should get to the business of the Assembly and mind our behavior and attitude when it is that we are presenting here. So, wondering about now the public servants, Mr. Speaker, since the minister spoke very little about the public service, there are a lot of questions that I do have, and I'm not sure when we will be at a place for her to be able to respond to them. But I wonder about when you look at the budget and you look at the indicators, for example, the indicators that have done well over the last year were those that dealt with training. So there was a lot of work done where training is concerned. There was a lot of work done where goal is concerned. But all of the indicators that look at the actual policies to help the public service move from where it's at to where it should be have all reduced from where it was last year. Their target and where they actually got was actually reduced from last 2021 to 2022. And I think that is something that we need to look at, because if it is that you're going to come to the National Assembly and you're going to be asking for monies, then you need to be saying what policies are you going to be implementing to ensure that the monies are spent effectively. And so, Mr. Speaker, in spite of everything that is being said, I'm hoping that some of this comes over and comes across as not being facetious, not trying to demean anyone, but helping us to understand that more is expected of us and more should be done while we are in this assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no clue whether or not over the last 2 years any new policies have been thought up, have been implemented to ensure that the public servants are better off now in terms of their becoming more professional, ensuring that their workspace is or what it is that they use to get their work done, the services that they have to carry out for the public, whether that has gotten better over time. So hopefully at some stage the minister would be able to speak to these things. I also noticed that in this 2023 budget that there is some talk about new policies being implemented. I heard the Minister of Labor at some point speaking to the fact that some outside person did an assessment of the labor force. And that is actually a good thing, but I'm hoping that we could get some more information on that and that maybe that assessment could be laid in the House so that the country would get a sense of where we are, where labor is concerned, and what is required for us to move that forward. Because there's apparently a lot of conversation right now about, bringing persons into the country because there is some sort of labor shortage. And my question then is, what are we doing as a country to ensure that before we bring persons here, that we ensure that the Guyanese people who need jobs and are looking for jobs are in a position to take those jobs before you actually bring persons from outside for those jobs. So a link between the training that is happening in the public service and what is happening at the Ministry of Labor is actually necessary. And so I'm hoping that we can do something to deal with that. So, Mr. Speaker, I need to comment on something that I forgot I should have done a bit earlier. The Minister of Business, Tourism, I'm not even too sure what her portfolio is. Tourism, business, tourism, yes. Yes, the minister just spoke, and the Honorable Minister just spoke, and she was very good, and I commend her too, for citing Professor Thomas. She actually did it quite a few times, and I was actually shocked that she went to Professor Thomas to quote him. And so if you went till to 1970s, I will bring us a bit further than 1970s, a bit closer. And the same Professor Thomas that she found to be very honorable and very sound, that she would be able to quote him, also said that we had an underground economy that accounts for $188 billion between the years 2001 to 2008. He estimated that the public procurement frauds which took place under the PPP, and this is in Kaitro News article, under the PPP amount to about $140 billion. And he said that he was calculated from the estimates provided by none other than the Guyanese former Auditor General, Anand Gusran, in part 11 of a series in public financial management. So while it is all good to go back all the way to the 1970s, when it was a whole totally different dynamics in the world economy and the local economy during that time. We're going closer to 2001 to 2008, where it's said by that same gentleman of what was happening when the PPP was in office. So we can use the same quotes. So, Mr. Speaker, I also would like to say to something that the minister also mentioned and spoke to what it is or how it is that the APNUFC would want to spend the oil monies. And she gave a hypothetical situation, and if for some reason the oil monies, the cost of oil reduces, what would then happen? All the subsidies that we give to persons would then have to dry up and all of those things. But let's look at it this way. The minister has not recognized that what they have just done with this particular budget is drain all of the current monies that we have and put it into capital projects. So let's do that what if scenario. What if, right? What if the oil, the cost of oil drops now, right? No money has gone to the people, but they're going to capital projects. So the cost of a barrel of oil drops now. What then happens? One, those contracts that you have started will have to stop halfway that you would have used the oil monies for. And the people would have received nothing from the oil funds. And so the people would be left no economically different than they are currently. And the capital projects would be just there for everybody to see have done, as with Skeldon, as the fiber optic cable, and other things that have done in the past. So when it is that you're making such statements, you have to be clear as to what exactly it is that you're saying. And what I think my colleague was saying earlier, Director of Finance, is that focusing on the current part of the budget is just as important, and it cannot be left to whims and fancies of anyone without recognizing that it is important to increase the salaries and wages of public servants, and also the ensuring that people have access and opportunities to access good funding so that they can remove themselves out of poverty. Now, Mr. Speaker, you know what is sad and what I recognize is that there are obviously two different philosophies. There is a philosophy that you focus on infrastructure, and then there's a philosophy where you focus on people. And in terms of development, because there are different phases of development, there are different types of development. Development is infrastructural development, but there's also human development. And if it is that we decide that we're going to utilize the majority of our budget and majority of the money from our natural resource fund to focus on capital and infrastructure and not as much on human development, then I think we're going in the wrong direction. Now, on one side of the thing, we have human development, yes, and maybe anybody would say just focusing on human development may not be the best option. I don't disagree with that. But I think we need to find a balance between capital investment and current investment. And sadly, this particular budget does not find that balance. And I think we need to do more where that is concerned. So, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot that can be said about this budget. There's a lot that can be said where this budget is concerned. A lot of my colleagues have gone into specifically where they disagree with the budget. I wouldn't say that I disagree with everything. There are some projects that I think are good. There are some projects that I think are good for the country. But what I think needs to be understood is that when the people are demanding in the street here that we have a 40% increase in a budget, and there's money from oil that they didn't think would ever happen, that for ages, and my parents have been saying that we have oil, we just haven't found it yet. Now that the money is being rolled in, they're expecting to get a little bit more from that than they currently are getting. So it's not a case that, no, don't do any capital projects, no, don't do any infrastructure, but it's about more, how do we put a little bit more monies into the pockets of those who need it, and those who after this year will see the roads, they will see the bridges, they will see the capital projects, but still can't feed their families. Is there any policy in the budget that deals with that? I'm seeing that I am saying that, for example, the Ministry of Social Protection, there is $3,000, there is $5,000 for the different sections of our society that particularly need it. But I believe that more is required. And that is what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, on that note, what I will say at the end is more is required of us. More has been demanded of us. With this the oil resources, I think we should do more for the people. And as if it is that we can possibly work together to get that done, I think we would be a better place in this country. There is such a divisiveness. There is such a divisiveness that is happening in our National Assembly and has seeped through the entire society that I think we need to recognize. I think sometimes we live off of it. We think politically that it is the best thing to do, to have our country divided, because that is how you can determine where your votes will come from. But at some point, if it is that as a society we are going to move forward, we need to do better than what we have been seeing over the last 5, 10 years in this country, probably since independence. And so I will ask of the government side that, yes, you're in government. Some may say installed, you may disagree. Yes, you are there at the helm of power, but that does not mean that you have to wield all the power. And that's where what that means is that disallowing and discriminating and marginalizing against persons who you believe may not be on your side. That is not how a government should function. And so better should be expected of you and demanded of you, and you should do better. Thank you.
Member? And now for the Honorable Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Charles Ramson Jr. Honorable Minister, you may proceed with your contribution.
I present Sir Charles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'm very pleased to stand before this House to support the largest budget in our country's history. Also, the fact that there are no new taxes added. It's 41% larger than the previous year's budget. And with the previous speaker, one would expect that coming from the Builders Party, she would be one of the people to support a heavy infrastructure budget to build the country. And after listening to so many of the presentations from the APNU AFC, the opposition side, over the last day, I'm reminded of the quote by Mark Twain, where he said, "Let's be thankful for fools, because without them, the rest of us wouldn't be able to succeed." Mr. Speaker, when I came to the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, our our ministry had $2.4 billion. This year, our ministry is getting $7.1 billion. And I would like to take at this point the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, just to express my gratitude to His Excellency President Ali for all of the support and the guidance, the direction that he's been given to me and to our ministry in the last year. I would like to also take the opportunity to express my gratitude towards the Vice President, Minister Ashni Singh, his team at the Ministry of Finance, for all of the support that they've given to me over the last few months or so in relation to the crafting of the budget. And I would also like to thank all of the people of the communities where we have been working aggressively, where they have welcomed me, welcomed our team, welcomed our ministry, and for all of the work that we've been doing in those communities that have been bringing meaningful and tangible success and development to them. Mr. Speaker, it has been a tremendous year of achievements for the government. A phenomenal year of growth, development. In 2022, over 10,000 house lots were allocated. More than 20,000 since coming into office. And I've said it before and I want to say it again, Mr. Speaker, this will be the greatest transfer of wealth to the average Guyanese person in any 5-year period to date. We've given out more than 7,000 or almost 7,500 scholarships in 2022 and over 13,000 since we came into office. We secured the biggest carbon credit deal in the world, where Guyana will receive a minimum of $750 million US for 30% of our standing forests. We also included in that deal, Minister Vikram, the legacy credits of $187 million to cater for the APNUAFC's failed period. We increased the children's cash grant that the APNUAFC removed to $30,000, and in this year, we are increasing it to $40,000. We built new highways, thousands of roads and streets, new schools, new hospitals and health care clinics, new police stations. The road to Lethem has started. As we promised in the manifesto, all the heavy lifting for the Demerara River Bridge has been done, which Mr. Ramjatan had said, the honorable member had said, was a pipe dream. We also did the heavy lifting for the gas to power project, all of which will be completed within 2 years before our tenure is up. As we promised in the manifesto, we put our oil blocks to auction. As we promised in our manifesto, we passed the local content law. We set a regional record for passing 25 pieces of legislation last year. The government worked with financial institutions to secure the lowest mortgage rates in our country's history so that ordinary people can secure mortgages to build their homes. We secured for the first time in 10 years the CPL finals and the semi-finals. As we promised in our manifesto, we launched the Sports Academy. We commenced construction of the mini stadiums. A new mobile phone carrier is about to start operating. We now have visa-free access to the United Kingdom. We signed a deal with Mount Sinai for better health care for Guyanese people. Our non-oil growth, Mr. Speaker, our non-oil growth is 11.5%, which makes us as a country the second fastest growing economy from a non-oil perspective. Leave aside the oil growth that we have had. The non-oil growth, 11.5%, has made us the second fastest growing economy in the world. Our macroeconomic indices have improved as well, Mr. Speaker. Our debt to GDP ratio has improved while other countries like Japan, Singapore, Greece, the US, the UK, Canada, Spain, France, all of them have ballooned their debt positions. Meanwhile, ours has improved. Our balance of trade is now close to $3 billion surplus. Our foreign exchange reserves have now returned to the levels when we have left leaving office in 2015. Things have been moving so fast, Mr. Speaker, that some of the known and usual suspects have been saying that we are moving too fast, But I have news for them, Mr. Speaker, that if they think that we're moving too fast, then they ain't seen nothing yet. And all of those amazing things have happened for our country in 2022, and not a single statement of positivity would have come from the opposition. Not a single statement. Many of the people in the country have been saying that positive things about how the government has been performing. Not a single word of positivity coming from the opposition. So if you want to be taken seriously, you should first of all start by acknowledging all of the successes that we've had so far. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we have seen a stellar year of performance by the opposition as well. We've seen that for 3 months in the year of 2022, they left the country without a leader of the opposition. For 3 months, they left the country without the leader of the opposition. And after a few months of his performance as leader of the opposition, some of his own members have said it is best we return to the situation of not having a leader of the opposition. There was an attempt to steal the mace on Facebook Live, and while all the cameras were on. And imagine, after attempting to steal the mace, they went to court. They went to court when we were suspending them, when they were suspended. They went to court to go and overturn the suspension and failed again. Another case that Roysdale Ford, the honorable member, could not succeed on. They also had 3 APNU AFC members who resigned from their seats as parliamentarians. And what's interesting to note is that none of those seats were never filled by any young person. Just as they did when they were in government, when they failed to give young people the opportunity and that they promised to give them in government, many people, many young people were thrown by the wayside. They had 3 opportunities, 3 resignations that they had as MPs. Not a single seat was filled by young people. The General Secretary of the PNC has resigned. Then I'm now hearing that her successor has resigned. The treasurer of the PNC has resigned and has alleged serious corrupt practices and racism. The opposition voted against the local content bill. Imagine a bill that was supposed to bring benefits for Guyanese to get opportunities for business and employment in the oil and gas sector, without which they would never had the opportunity. They voted against that bill. They boycotted Parliament many times, Mr. Speaker, and they go around the country telling falsehoods to people, trying to block projects, and they told people not to take the vaccines. They told people that they shouldn't take the scholarships. They also told their NDCs that they control not to support the cleanup efforts that the government was leading. The fact is, that was their stellar year, 2022, and it is now commonly understood by everyone in the country that the opposition is lazy, it's not credible, and it's useless.
Honorable member, you have to withdraw lazy for me.
I withdraw the word lazy, Mr. President. They lack energy. They're lethargic, I'm being advised. And that's the reason why, Mr. Speaker, they are unable to get a crowd anywhere. Mr. Speaker, I even saw that they had on Boxing Day a big green lime at Congress Place. And even for the green lime, they were unable to get a crowd. So over the course of this debate, Mr. Speaker, it would be senseless for the opposition to come to the people of the country, having had already 5 years in government, spent $1.4 trillion in this country. Don't come and tell them and lost the election, and don't come and tell us that you can do a better job. And I've heard the argument, Mr. Speaker, that the country needs a strong opposition. What the country needs, Mr. Speaker, is a responsible opposition. Not just a strong opposition, a responsible opposition. And how is this budget crafted, Mr. Speaker? I want you to know that when it comes to analyzing countries and the quality of the country that we're living in, and we make comparisons all the time. Why is Guyana in this situation? And it is always the quality of our infrastructure. And if you want people to have a better life in this country, you have to give them quality infrastructure. And anyone who doubts the importance of quality infrastructure, just remove the seawalls. Just remove the seawalls for 1 minute, or for 1 day, or for 1 week, and Georgetown becomes unlivable. And this year, again, we're spending heavy on infrastructure, and I call infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, the great equalizer. The great equalizer, because whether you're rich or you're poor, you have to drive on the same bridge. You have to drive on the same road. You have the same source of electricity. You benefit from the same canals. You benefit from the same sea defenses. And many times when people say, you can't eat road, I heard them say that, you can't eat road. Well, actually, you can. Because when the government spends on infrastructure, on let's say building a road, it goes to a contractor. The contractor has to pay workers. The contractor has to buy materials like asphalt and sand and loom, and that goes to a business. Those businesses have employees, and then when those employees also have to pay taxes, the contractor has to pay taxes. They have to pay NIS. It keeps expanding for everyone. They have to rent machinery, move trucks, the truck drivers, everyone gets an opportunity to eat as a result of spending on infrastructure. Even the banks get to expand their commercial activity because we are spending, because they are going to have to go and take out loans and pay off on interest. So all of that, even the accountants who have to file their taxes, they get an opportunity to work. The legal clerks are getting an opportunity to work. The clerical staff, all of that expands economic activity, expands our tax base, so everyone gets a chance to eat. It also creates the connectivity connectivity of trade. And when you want to talk about sustainability of growth, it is about creating the connectivity of trade. And one thing that this type of spending, which is infrastructure based, that many people don't understand, is that it is cumulative. Cumulative. Every minute saved, every dollar saved, it multiplies across every citizen, and it adds up to greater and greater output, greater disposable income, greater consumption, greater time savings. And if you are really concerned, the opposition, about inflation, the last thing from an economic perspective that you want to be doing is to be pushing rapid spending on salaries and government transfers. That's the last thing that you want to be doing, because that is the classic recipe for inflation. Too much money chasing too few goods. That is the simple description of inflation. Too much money chasing too few goods. So these are points that you may lose on the opposition, but it's not lost here on us in terms of an economic philosophy. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to speak on my area. We've spent some time on the bigger picture and what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, for sport, it has been another phenomenal year for us. We commenced the construction of the mini stadiums at Anna Regina and Mackenzie. We commenced the transformation of the Cliff Anderson Sports Hall. We commenced construction of modern stands at the athletic tracks in New Amsterdam and Linden. We completed construction of a new stand in Lenora and at the Lenora Track and Field Stadium. We completed the procurement of international lights and quality international lights at the synthetic track in New Amsterdam. We completed major renovation works at the National Stadium. We completed procurement of international lights at the iFlood ground. We commenced construction of a new doubles court, commenced construction of a new racket hall at the racket center. We commenced construction of an all-weather cricket training facility at the National Stadium. We completed the asphalt work at the Linden track, and we're about to lay the synthetic material with the supervision of BSW from Germany. We completed payment for the repair of the track. And as for community grounds, Mr. Speaker, something that's very close to my heart, we have completed and supported work for being done at 55, just in last year, 55 community grounds in 2022. I saw in the news media reports that they said it was 55 since coming into office, and I saw inadvertently the minister responsible for finance had said that it was 55 since coming into office. It's just 55 in last year alone. It's 92 since coming into office, and we've lit 21 of those grounds since coming into office. And when we pay attention, when we're doing these community grounds, Mr. Speaker, we have an integrated approach to what we're doing. So it's not just about doing the grounds, but it's offering all of the opportunities and connecting with the community so that we can know how we can get over the opportunities in all the areas that we are offering, so that we can offer that for the young people, so that they can be part of the program of development and training. We were the first country in CONCACAF, Mr. Speaker, to secure the FIFA for Schools program, working with the GFF. We were able to secure Guyana, Mr. Speaker, as one of the host countries for the Under-19 World Cup that was held earlier this year. We hosted the IGG Games after 5 years, and for the first time had 9 disciplines. We expanded our sports academy program, hiring certified coaches to run the nurseries. Our Teach Them Young swim camp had over 1,600 kids, And the program was successfully implemented with not a single incident. Not a single incident. We held the President's Cup, One Guyana tournament with the GFF, and I was just in Region 9, and I heard the story of one of the villages where they were explaining to me that two of their young football players, had the opportunity to represent the region because it is a new format for the tournament, represent the region, and they are now selected for our national team, for our national pool of players. Had that not been for that program, they would not be part of that national program. We also held the Junior Caribbean Area Squash Association tournament right here in Guyana. And this year, we're once again heavy on building the infrastructure for facilities, training, and the sports policy will be completed. So what's important as well for this year, I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that for the first time in any budget presentation, we've had the words Cricket Academy. Cricket Academy included in a budget presentation. For all these years that we have been a leader in the world for cricket talent, producing some of the best in the world, and cricket has been on a decline in the region. It is the first time that we're taking hold of this as part of the government program to improve the talent and the performance of all of our cricketers by building a cricket academy. And I want to respond to some of the things that the Honorable Member, Mr. Jones, had said yesterday when he wants to compare records of the PPP and the PNC. And when you compare the 28 years of the PNC plus the APNU AFC's 5 years, which is 33 years, and the PPP 23 years plus 2 years, which is 25, and just for the sake of clarity for those folks on the other side, that 33 is more than 25. 33 is more than 25. It was under the PPP that the National Stadium was built. It was under the PPP that the Aquatic Center was built. It was under the PPP that the public national squash court at the Racket Center was built. It was under the PPP that the gymnasium was built. It was under the PPP that the Lenora Track and Field Stadium was built. And all of that was done without oil money. Without oil money. The only sports facilities that the PNC or the APNU AFC have ever built was in their 33 years in office were, one, the Cliff Anderson Sports Hall, and two, the Durban Park project, of which $1.4 billion was spent and $600 million cannot be accounted for. Cannot be accounted for. Even the Mackenzie Sports Club was not built by the PNC. It was built by Demba. So when the Honorable Member, Mr. Barbershop, boasts about the APNU buying a replaced screen for the national...
So, Honorable Minister, I don't know we have Honorable Barbershop.
Forgive me, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Member, Mr. Jones, who may be seeking proprietorship of a barbershop. When he said and boasts that the APNU AFC bought a replaced screen at the National Stadium, it was the PPP that built the entire stadium. It was the PPP that built the entire stadium, and that point would be lost on them. That's how parochial them on the other side are. And all of the references that were made in relation to the hosting of tournaments, they were just the temporary beneficiaries of the PPP's vision and investment that we made. And when he mentioned about the sports policy, I happened to go and do some digging to find the minutes of the National Sports Commission, where at June 28th meetings, where he was at that meeting, along with many other persons. Here's what it says in the meeting. Mr. Butts mentioned that a news report which spoke of a sports policy being presented to minister and cabinet by the end of the month, but was puzzled as to how the commission was left out of the process. Dr. Roach suggests a follow-up meeting with the minister. Mr. Jones mentioned that the associations and federations are saying they had no input into the document, which are contrary to what the reports, which said wide consultation had been completed of the document. Mr. Roach says the whole situation worries him. That is what is contained in the minutes of the National Sports Commission of a meeting that he attended.
Honorable Minister, two things that please, I allow you 2 times to make reference to the honorable member without. And secondly, to lay over that minute. To lay over the document.
I will, yes, yes.
Thanks.
Yes, and it's important, Mr. Speaker, that what they want me to complete in 2 years, is something that they never completed in 5 years. So it's important to note the duplicity. And when he made reference to the statement by boxer Kevin Alicock, I want you to just listen to what the statement was. And I'll lay over all of this, Mr. Speaker. He said that, no, this is Mr. Kevin Alicock. He said, "Let me state for the record that I have never met that individual before, and I do not know who he is." He was talking about somebody who was sitting at the press conference. "Let me clarify once again that my previous public statement had nothing to do with the government of Guyana and the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, but had to do with the sports associations. In fact, I issued a subsequent statement immediately thereafter stating, I've always had the support of the Office of the President and the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport. And I express my gratitude for that support. While I do not get involved in politics, and I would like the opposition to leave me out of their drama, as we have to say in Guyana, we have to give Jack his jacket. This Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport has been the most active, supportive, effective, and visionary this country has ever seen." And I can't help but note when we speak about the Allianz Pompi tournament, where even the simple things they couldn't get done. We had to spend $77 million last year to get so that the track can be repaired. Even though the damage to that track happened within their 5-year period, during the warranty, which we could have gotten replaced and fixed for free, because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, we had to spend $77 million for doing that. So, Mr. Speaker, I know time is moving, so I want to move to the...
So this is a good time to ask for an extension for you.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'd like to ask my colleague be given time to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister Ramson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Continue to conclude.
The highlight of our cultural calendar was the successful hosting of the Guyana's new tourism product, which was the Cricket Carnival. The ministry partnered with the Ministry of Tourism, Industry and Commerce and successfully held 15 events and a road parade over the 2 weeks period, and it was hugely successful. One of the events was the One Guyana Mega Concert, which saw the fulfillment of a commitment by His Excellency of a stage only for Guyanese artists. This was the largest crowd for any Guyanese-only stage in our country's history. And all of the revenue from the gate went to the performers. And the sum, Mr. Speaker, was doubled by President Ali. The other first for us was the moving of independence to the celebration in another region, Anna Regina. This, again, hugely successful. And we intend to rotate to another region every year. We reintroduced the Guyana Prize for Literature, introducing for the first time a youth category, and will culminate in a literary arts festival during the Mashramani period. And Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to show you what happened during APNU's period. They killed the Guyana Prize for Literature. And this is the article that was published in the process of killing the Guyana Prize for Literature. This is October 8, 2018. Caption, Guyana Prize impasse for cabinet this week. Subcaption, Norton unsure if money available for literary award. Imagine he's the minister and he doesn't show, just George Norton. Imagine he's the minister and doesn't even know if the money is available in the budget for the award. He then goes on to say, I have sent a memo to cabinet. I'm going to cabinet with an agenda. I hope we can discuss it on Tuesday. And what is the result of his Tuesday discussion, his agenda? The prize was killed. It was never held again. Mr. Speaker, working with the ministry, with my colleague ministry, we also were able to secure representation of our culture at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, which was fully funded by Qatar. Working with my brother here, we were able to secure that. We also had the Cultural Creative Industries Grant. The ministry also introduced for the first time the youth culture camps to expose young minds to visual and performing arts, to enhance their awareness of Guyanese culture and heritage. 240 youths participated in the sessions where they focused on traditional drumming and drum making, traditional dance and modern dance, drawing, painting, heritage awareness. During the heritage aspects, they were able to visit historical sites. We held consultations on the cultural policy, which will be concluding this year. We had over 2,000 persons, young people, we were able to engage with in the sector. Some of the projects that we did were significant. We completed the installation of seats at the balcony at the National Culture Center. We also completed the replacement of the Humana Yana roof. We completed the accessway and Banab at the Hog Island in Windmill. We completed accessibility to projects at Fort Nassau and completed enhancement work to the 1763 monument and Enmore's martyr. This year, one of the big things that we have on our program is to focus on getting our creative industries academy or Institute for Creative Arts credited. This year also on youth, Mr. Speaker, we're spending $94 billion on education, $2.7 billion injected into the University of Guyana, $2.5 billion into the technical institutes, $1.8 billion into gold scholarships, $488 million for the BIT, $200 million into youth entrepreneur projects in agriculture, $960 million for us on training, etc. And this is one of the things that we're most proud of. We have engaged more than 5,000 young people in our youth program, in the science fair or the the President's Youth Award. We also had for our robotics training, but one of the things that we are most proud of, which we launched yesterday, we were able to retrofit the buildings and purchase all the tools and do the upskilling for all of the trainers so that we can launch a transformational training program for TechVoc, where young people can enter our institution and get their technical vocational training in 4 months. 4 months in 4 of the main areas, and it will be 5 this year. There is no other technical vocational training program in Guyana or in the West Indies where they can get CTVET certified in just 4 months. And we will be expanding that this year. Mr. Speaker, I have the great privilege and honor of being the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport to come and add my voice to all of the work that we've been doing at the ministry and to support the work that the Ministry of Finance has been doing. And I would like to leave this lasting word and this closing word with a special thank you from my own ministry, all of the hardworking staff and all of my colleagues at the cabinet and my ministry for all of the support that they've given to me, to us, and to all of the, by extension, all of the young people, the tens of thousands of young people that our ministry has been able to engage and improve and give leadership and mentorship across the country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now for the contribution of the Honorable Member, Mr. Jermaine Figueroa.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, having listened to the minister who just concluded his presentation, and in his embryonic remarks, Mr. Speaker, his quote that he quoted was intended to insult the honorable member before him. I too, sir, am reminded of a quote from the famous Greek playwright Aristophanes, who said, and I quote, "Ignorance can be cured, but stupidity is forever." Mr. Speaker, as I stand to join this debate and lend my voice to Budget 2023, permit me to express my gratitude to the hard-working public servants at the Ministry of Finance and the Honorable Member, Dr. Singh, for the budget he has presented. A budget, Mr. Speaker, that promised to play a pivotal role in where our country will go and how our people will benefit from the utilization of the nation's resources, which is yet to be proven. Dr. Singh, the Honorable Member, your hard-working staff at the ministry have given services above and beyond, and they are yet to be rewarded with an increase from this very said budget. Where is the gratitude? Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023, which has guaranteed and garnered from this side of the House the most appropriate adjectives to describe it in its truest sense, in its realness, the honest views of the majority of the people in this country. Mr. Speaker, taking the opportunity as I so have, I too, Mr. Speaker, would accurately like to give my description, of which this budget, I believe, is an unadulterated extortion of the people's money. This budget does not reflect the will and the desires of the small man, the majority of the people who eagerly, hopefully, and optimistic about getting more from this budget, which has epitomized the term, the paradox of plenty. The paradox of plenty, Mr. Speaker. Sir, whenever one reads a budget, or listens to the presentation, no matter how long it is, the small man is only concerned with what is in it for him. The pensioners want to know what you have given them. And I say, Mr. Speaker, without successful contradiction, that the paltry sum of $5,000 was not pleasing to this demographic of the population, especially those, Mr. Speaker, who are taking care of their grandchildren. They are immensely disappointed, Mr. Speaker. Parents who will benefit from the Because We Care cash grant of $10,000 more. We are thankful, Mr. Speaker, thankful for this increase, and we welcome it. But equally so, Mr. Speaker, we believe that this increase, Madam Minister of Education, should be complemented with the reintroduction of the 5Bs initiative. Mr. McCoy, the honorable member, tried to trivialize the importance of this program, which played, Mr. Speaker, an important role in providing free transportation and hot meals to countless of parents and students who benefited from this initiative, Mr. Speaker. I seriously hope that the Honorable Minister of Education will give some serious consideration to this sensible proposition and add it to her ministry's program. Mr. Speaker, what is one of the most disappointing group of people is our hard-working public servants who expected from this budget to see what they will be getting, to help cushion them from the challenges posed by high cost of living. They continue to wait in anguish, and it is most unfair to the hard-working people who contribute to the nation's coffers and keeps the engine of government running. The Honorable Minister of Finance, I beseech you, sir, to provide our public servants with the answers they seek. Mr. Speaker, the theme of any budget is of utmost importance, for it gives insights of what is to come, and it lays the foundation on which that vision will be realized. But sir, this budget's theme, improving lives today, building prosperity tomorrow, is an oxymoron in many respects to its contents presented, and in some instances very misleading, Mr. Speaker, with its inaccuracies and misrepresentation of the facts, of which I will highlight in a moment's time. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to highlight what I believe was the most impressive about Budget 2023, which was the minister's stamina to stand and present for over 6 hours. 6 hours, Mr. Speaker, without a bathroom break. Sir, I must confess.
Just let me correct you, 5 hours and 20 minutes officially.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I must confess, I had always admired Dr. Sting's style of debating long before coming to this house. And I believe he too is secretly disappointed that he was unable to give more to the people most in need, which when more is available, Mr. Speaker. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I believe I speak for every Guyanese, especially all public servants, youths, senior citizens, the vulnerable, and the poor, when I say we wish if this very impressive demonstration of the length of the minister's presentation would have reflected real beneficial policies and programs that would have actually bring tangible life-changing opportunities and benefits to help them with the harsh realities of extremely high cost of living. Mr. Speaker, the plight of the poor in my constituency, Region 10 in particular, and that of the ordinary Guyanese in general, in this country, which is the fastest growing economy in the world, is most unacceptable given the vast wealth and our population size. Mr. Speaker, the framework of Budget 2023, as posited by the Minister of Finance on the 16th of January, is a pointed reminder to all Guyanese that if you are at the bottom of the social ladder, the PPP administration, through its trickle-down economic policies, will ensure you remain there. Referencing the World Bank's report, Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that price inflation on food and the essential dietary needs for a food basket remains at well over 20% and continues to rise. No theatrics by the Honorable Member McCoy can dilute or evade this fact. His trick, his price trick, in an effort to debunk the real expressed views of ordinary Guyanese, with his display of two commodities from his well-endowed food pantry, will not fool anyone. In yesterday's Stabrook News on page 13, captioned, "How the cost of living is hitting people." How the cost of living is hitting people. This is what real Guyanese are saying, Mr. Speaker. Colin Rodney, and I wish the Honorable Member Todd would have been here, because Colin Rodney is also from Linden, and this is what he had to say. Every item has risen in the market. Just imagine we are importing sugar in Guyana. Just imagine we are importing sugar in Guyana, and a pound is now $200. 3 months ago, it was $80. Milk, $720 from $460. Elisa Smith, the rising cost of living is affecting me in groceries. I could not afford to pay 300 to 340 to 350 for 1 pound of okra to feed my family of 6. She said ground provision is very expensive too. A pound of plantain is now $240. Citizen Ozan Gordon said the rise in inflation is too high. 2 to 3 months ago, sweet potato used to be $100 a pound. Now it's $350. Jennifer Ribeiro tomatoes is now $600 a pound. These are the real views of Guyanese people, Mr. Speaker, not the invisible man the minister claimed to have bought his imported sugar from when he voted successfully for the failing Gaisuku that gets billions more every budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I read the comments of the Guyana Agriculture Workers Union saying that this is a pro-budget, I long to ask them to please point us to the measures in this budget that address same. Mr. Speaker, I know you would secretly agree with me that it is utter wickedness when the government would forcefully give public servants 8% increase and tax it in 2022, knowing full well that food prices alone would have absorbed such a meager increase. Mr. Speaker, it is visible for all to see that this budget has heavily endowed the Ministry of Public Works with a very big chunk of budget 2023. Sir, I am forced to admit that the road to development is the building of roads, bridges, and roadways and proper infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, this budget, sir, remains of genuine concern for me, for the majority of my colleagues in this House, and all Guyanese living on the coast, which is way below sea level, Mr. Speaker. And no serious consideration is being put to the protection of our sea defenses. Equally, sir, the poor quality of works being executed on our roads, drains, and bridges. Coupled with that, Mr. Speaker, the inadequate skill set at the ministry and at some contracting firms to complete those works to be given in a genuine time is of great concern for us. Mr. Speaker, as important those infrastructural works are for poor Guyanese, as the PPP had said in opposition, they can't eat roads, bridges, and many of them don't work for Gaisuka, Mr. Speaker, which continues to get never-ending billions. Mr. Speaker, I must turn my attention now to provide some comments on the previous speaker's portfolio that continues to pose a challenge to gauge the productivity of the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports for me. If one was to ask me from outside of Guyana, which sports discipline had taken off in 2022 under the leadership of Minister Ramson and his Sports Commission, I would have to conduct a study session, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my colleague asks the minister to make sense. I dare say this minister, with this very important ministry, makes no sense. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Honorable Minister of Finance for speaking on behalf of this ministry. For the Honorable Minister, most of Guyana are aware, Mr. Speaker, that for the last 3 budgets debates in this House, this is what most of us ever, this is what, Mr. Speaker, the minister presentation represented for this minister, whose magnified gross incompetence of this ministry is concerning. This minister, Mr. Speaker, is more concerned about Facebook's like at his ministry's page. In 2020, the Honorable Minister in his debut speech as a minister said, and I quote, "When I got to the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, our Facebook page had 6,000 likes. Within 1 month, 10,000 likes." In his 2021 budget presentation, again, the Honorable Minister informed this August House, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "Imagine the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, when I got there, had 6,000 likes on its Facebook page. Today, it has over 22,000 likes and 20,000 followers on Facebook." Mr. Speaker, what a remarkable accomplishment. Well done, Minister. Mr. Speaker, in thanking the Minister of Finance for ably assisting his colleague, I must inform him that some of the information provided were misleading, grossly inaccurate, and I am confident, Mr. Speaker, that the Honorable Minister wasn't academically or intellectually dishonest. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that the Honorable Minister would intentionally provide this House with inaccurate information. But, sir, I must inform him, the Honorable Minister, at page 60 of his budget speech, where he was misled to believe that those 2 synthetic tracks at Region 6 and 10 were completed. They are far from that reality, Mr. Speaker. The track at Linden, however, was blessed with being fenced twice. So it has 2 fences, less than 5 feet apart. Less than 5 feet apart, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I do not possess the sagacity to understand the logic of spending an additional $26 million for a second fence. Is it to prevent the country's best athletes from accessing the facility? Sir, it is important to note that despite all of the challenges of having to access the Bayrock facility where the track is being built, did not hinder our region's prolific athletes from winning the 6 consecutive national cycling, swimming, and track and field championships. 17 overall, Mr. Speaker. Sir, what was most disappointing about this victory is that the minister with responsibility for our young people and sports did not recognize the importance to present himself, not only to present the winning trophy for our future sports ambassadors and offer them some encouraging words, which speaks volume of the minister's ineptitude. Equally disappointing, Mr. Speaker, was the no-show of the Minister of Education. That was not expected from the Honorable Minister, Priya Manik-Chan. Mr. Speaker, what is really the plan of the ministry for the continuation of our star athletes after high school? Is there a plan to have the University of Guyana have a real sports program to facilitate the continuation of our nation's sports pursuits? Sir, I believe we have the best of opportunities here and now to utilize one of the most dynamic and phenomenal Vice Chancellor the University of Guyana now has. Dr. Paloma Mohammed is a woman who thinks outside the box. I believe she is a revolutionary. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, I believe the Ministers of Education and Culture, Youth and Sport should engage the Vice Chancellor to bring this much needed component into reality at the University of Guyana to offer scholarship opportunities to our athletes to continue their education and craft. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I believe the time is right for Linden to be given an arm of the University of Guyana, similar to that attained in Region 6. Sir, as I would have indicated to the President on his visit to Linden, our athletes need more than a completed track and an upgraded grounds. Our athletes need those facilities, Mr. Speaker, to be furnished with gyms and athletic training equipment, different sports gears for the respective disciplines, trained coaches, exchange programs, and scholarships for our gifted athletes, which he accepted is most needed, and I presume he was in full agreement. Mr. Speaker, I am happy with the increased allocation for sports, but I must confess, I do have some legitimate concerns of seeing the benefits of all those monies. Mr. Speaker, the reality is none of the sports discipline in this country have improved despite having all of those resources. Sir, none of the sports discipline is in January 2023 are at the levels of 2019 rather, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the distinct failure of the minister with responsibility for this sector has compelled none other than the head of state himself on the 27th of October 2022 to publicly apologize to the nation's athletes for the lack of support they received. This is the president, Mr. Speaker, saying that he apologized to the nation's athletes for the lack of support they received. Mr. Speaker, he assured athletes that under his watch, Mr. Speaker, their sacrifices and challenges of the past will not be their future. Sir, this statement by the head of state is testament to the confirmed failure of the minister to execute his mandate on behalf of the president as his.
Honorable member, I have no problem with you quoting what the president says, but now attributing that to failure of the minister's imputation. You need to withdraw that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by the president, by virtue of his own words, has expressed his no confidence in his minister, who is clueless.
Absolutely not. You're trying hard to say the same thing. Please withdraw that one. You've been going great so far. You've covered so much of ground in such a short time. You're going great. Don't spoil it.
Mr. Speaker, in heeding to your advice, one would be directed to say, based on the president's comments, Mr. Speaker, it can be inferred that the president himself has expressed no confidence in his minister.
Okay, you're insisting that you want to use that, right? You can. There is an issue with respect to standing orders and using the president's name to influence the debate. You're now trying to use that to say the president has no confidence in the minister, and I don't think that's what he said.
Okay,
And
Mr.
so
Speaker.
please strike all of those, and I'm striking them right now from the records, and don't go back down that road.
I'm so guided, Mr. Speaker, and I wish that I would be less. I wish I could continue uninterrupted with your guidance, of course, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the development of culture, youth, and sport, despite being given sufficient resources, Mr. Speaker, has not garnered any significant difference under the leadership of this minister. Mr. Speaker, those words uttered by the head of state, I believe, Mr. Speaker, is one in which, Mr. Speaker, that any self-respecting person having heard those words from their boss would have done the honorable and dignified thing, Mr. Speaker, and resigned. Sir, it is a mark of mature intelligence, Mr. Speaker, when one can not only read between the lines, when one can read not what only is, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, it is a mark of mature intelligence when one can read not only what is on the lines, but between the lines. The president, in an effort, Mr. Speaker, to save and salvage, the undeniable failure of the
Okay,
ministry.
you have to now totally withdraw that because now you're using, I'm think, intentionally to deal with influencing the procedure in the parliament. And the standing order is quite clear. Quoting what the
Mr.
president
Speaker,
said is,
withdrawn, Mr. Speaker.
and I'm not taking away your time. I've stopped the clock.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Speaker.
ahead, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, in efforts to save and salvage the undeniable failure of the ministry, many efforts, Mr. Speaker, were taken charge by the superior head of this minister to take charge himself with regards to leading the country's two most prolific sports, cricket and football, in 2022, with the concepts Cricket Carnival and the President's Cup. But is that enough, Mr. Speaker? Is that what is needed to develop sports in Guyana? Certainly not, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the 4.3 billion allocation, which is a significant increase of $1.1 billion, will essentially focus, I am told, on construction of multi-purpose sporting facilities and ensuring there is much needed infrastructure. But Mr. Speaker, the development of sports requires much more than infrastructural development. That is most welcome. The ministry had $3 billion last year for sports, a reflection of $7.5 billion in 2 years, and $9 billion will happen this year, Mr. Speaker. The needed question to be answered, Mr. Speaker, where is the evidence of all those resources? What significant impact was made from the utilization of those resources? Who really benefited, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, did the Everest Cricket Ground had any benefit from the monies that were exploited? I don't expect you to answer, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I was told that the minister loves cricket. He's an ardent fan of the sport. Mr. Speaker, with all this love for this sport, how many regions was furnished with cricket pitches to promote this sport by the minister who claimed to love cricket? Mr. Speaker, the development of an all-purpose cricket club at the National Stadium, Mr. Speaker, is unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, the region with the most prolific athletes, Region 10, has no cricket pitch. How many regions benefited from cricket gears, and how many cricket matches were supported by the minister? How many football courts were constructed across this country, and in which region benefited from gears? How many coaches from the respective disciplines benefited from accredited coaching programs from the parent bodies of those different associations and federations? How many associations, federations, and clubs were furnished with the necessary equipment and athletes with the proper gear for their respective sport of choice? Mr. Speaker, what did the increased allocation over the past 2 years did for impacting any identifiable sport? I dare say none. Mr. Speaker, we had oil money in 2022 budget. Sports was given $3 billion, and our athletes overseas representing Guyana, the fastest growing economy in the world, were begging for food and proper medical personnel, while the minister was issuing press statement to save face. What an embarrassment. What a disgrace. Mr. Speaker, we had oil money in 2022, and the national under-14 footballers had to miss an important CONCACAF tournament because of airfares challenges at that time, Mr. Speaker. It would seem that the more money we have, the more difficulty we have, Mr. Speaker, in making prudent decisions. The more money we have, Mr. Speaker, the harder it is to see the evidence of those spendings. Mr. Speaker, the minister boasted in his 2022 budget presentation about receiving support of all the sporting disciplines in Guyana. My question, Mr. Speaker, is the minister willing to give in 2023 each of the sporting disciplines that he claims supported him, Mr. Speaker, a financial subvention of at least 25% of their annual budget to avoid Guyanese ambassadors begging when they represent us abroad and to assist with their sports programs? We have oil money. We should use it wisely for our athletes' benefit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Sports spent close to $500 million in the last 2 years, and the Honorable Dr. Singh during his presentation indicated that 54 community grounds were upgraded across Region 1 to 6 and Regions 8 to 9. The revelation has aroused the suspicion of many communities, and we would like to know from the minister the names of those community grounds and how much resources were expended for those said upgrades. Mr. Speaker, in December, the Region 4 East Coast team, December 2022, had to travel all the way to the East Bank to use the GFF all-weather grounds to complete the village aspect of the tournament. This is because the minister only enhanced sunshine grounds. None of the investment went into all-weather facilities, which was suggested in my presentation last year, starting with one such ground in all 10 regions because it is most needed given our climate. Mr. Speaker, with $250 million in 2022 and an additional $250 in 2023, an equivalent of $500 million for ground enhancement. And no region can boast of having an all-weather ground except at the national stadium for only cricket, with lights, washroom facilities, and a mini pavilion that can accommodate at least 1,000 spectators, Mr. Speaker. With all these resources is grossly unacceptable. This is the vision of the minister and the ministry, even as Guyana, Mr. Speaker, continues in its harvesting of oil money from the billions of oil from our natural patrimony. Mr. Speaker, I have always, in my conscious effort to help the minister, provided not only constructive criticisms, which he apparently takes personal, but it is never with the intent to belittle the minister. That is not my forte, for he does that on his own. Sir, in every single budget debate, I have provided workable solutions that I know once implemented, it will enhance sports in general and provide our nation's athletes with the best opportunities to excel and succeed in their craft. Mr. Speaker, sports has to play a more defining role in carving our national identity. It requires a strategic time-bound developmental plan, a plan, Mr. Speaker, that requires a deliberate, tailored, and focused approach in identifying out of the 40 Olympic disciplines, 10 or 15 disciplines that provides us with the greatest of opportunities of winning Olympic medals, focusing on those identified disciplines as a national priority with a time frame as advised in my 2021 budget presentation should be taken seriously.
At this time, a serious extension is needed.
Comrade Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, please.
Thank you for your gracious extension, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the minister and his uninspiring and visionary gang of the ministry continues in this deadbeat posture, His Excellency's desire for Guyana to advance to the 2026 World Cup would be nothing, Mr. Speaker, but a fleeting illusion. Culture. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance in his speech adumbrated that it is important that the moment be seized to harness and fortify our rich cultural diversity. Words beautifully put and accepted by us on this side. But, sir, I shudder to think, and moreover, I'm of the belief that the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport don't understand this view. Sir, I have said it before, but I believe Stabrook News editorial in last Sunday's paper has encapsulated this position from an independent standpoint, which is very apt. It states the current Minister of Culture has never shown much enthusiasm for his portfolio. Has never, Mr. Speaker, or even for that matter, a sure grasp of what all aspects of it entails. It, it questioned, does the minister, Charles Ramson Jr., does he have any vision for this sector? This is an independent editorial articulating the very views that we on this side, Mr. Speaker, have been saying since the inception of the minister being at the ministry. Sir, I believe I have answered that question. I believe the head, the boss of the minister would have answered that question. I believe the minister himself knows the answer. We all have concluded, sir, that he does not hold the passion that is required, the vision that is required to lead this ministry. So I believe our uniqueness as a people of 6 different ethnicities, multi-religion, multicultural experiences, our customs, norms, food, music, dance, and all that makes us Guyanese presents the best opportunities for us, Mr. Speaker, as was articulated in my 2020 budget speech, for the promotion of brand Guyana. Mr. Speaker, with the award of $1.4 billion for culture and arts, if Guyana, for arts, Mr. Speaker, in Guyana, if we fail to recognize our country, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, if we fail to continue not to recognize our country's most celebrated activity, which is matrimony, which I believe, Mr. Speaker, and I believe those on the other side share the view, embodies our Guyanese-ness in the truest sense. This celebration makes us unique from our Caribbean counterparts. This festival should be branded and promoted as our indigenous version of Carnival, Mr. Speaker. But this government, through its most incompetent minister, has deliberately failed to put the necessary resources to propel matrimony to the heights of Trinidad Carnival, Barbados Crop Over, St. Lucia Jazz Festival, and such like. Imagine, sir, MASH in 2020, MASH, Mr. Speaker, imagine for MASH 2023 was launched, and again, the minister, who's responsible for this portfolio, Mr. Speaker, was visibly absent. Sir, I am very happy with all of the allocation for the recording studio, which was proposed by me in my 2022 budget debates, Mr. Speaker, which are now going to materialize and help benefit the talented and aspiring musician. Mr. Speaker, this is the maturity I long to see in budgets, where it is a reflection of the best ideas of our people. Sir, with this recording studio and the subsidies for recording artists, this will most definitely enhance Guyana's musical potential. So, Mr. Speaker, I welcome this initiative, but more importantly, I am compelled to ask the Attorney General once more, Mr. Speaker, to see the importance of bringing copyright legislation to this House, Mr. Speaker, so that our gifted artists, our gifted musicians, our playwrights, our poets, Mr. Speaker, can benefit from their intellectual properties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have a solemn duty as leaders in this country to understand that our most prized possession in this country is not our oil resources. It is our young people, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Education has taken a very magnanimous approach in leading this ministry, I believe, in the direction that it should go. And we are, as you have invited us to work with you. I am committed, like all of us in this House, Mr. Speaker, with regards to giving you all that is required, with regards to our best ideas to ensure that the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Culture, and all of the ministries that provide service to the people of Ghana embodies what it takes, Mr. Speaker, to propel Ghana to the heights that it rightfully deserves. With regards to this budget, Mr. Speaker, and the fact that it does not encapsulate all of the ideas that the people of Ghana, the elected people of Ghana, has presented through their elected representative, I cannot wholeheartedly support this budget in its entirety. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Now invite the Honorable Member, Mr. Alistair Charlie, to make his contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rebut to the last speaker, the Honorable German Figueroa. The Honorable Member in opposition now seems to have the answers, telling the government what to do. And this clearly shows, Mr. Speaker, the incompetence of the APNU AFC when they were in government. Mr. Speaker, allow me first to congratulate the senior minister in the office of the President with responsibility for finance, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, and the staff of the Ministry of Finance to produce a budget that sets the framework for Guyana's growth and development, the forward movement of our people and their advancement. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 is the embodiment of hope, the spirit of optimism, and the definition of one Guyana. It is not my intention, Mr. Speaker, to drag you and the Guyanese along an aimless road of negativity. It is not my intention, Mr. Speaker, to drag you and the Guyanese into a debate that seeks to castigate Guyana. Mr. Speaker, it is my intention to school the honorable opposition members. I will serve as a guide for them to come to the irrefutable position that Budget 2023 is good for the poor, working class people of this country, and has indeed. The measures are all laudable and will have an impact on the lives of the ordinary folks when its fiscal bite becomes a reality. Mr. Speaker, since assuming office in August 2020, the PPPC government has transformed the economic landscape of our country through its budgetary allocations. In the last 2 years in office, Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government has improved the quality of the country's social and physical infrastructure, improved access to shelter through the provision of housing to low-income families across the country, expanded the economic base of the country, the economic base of the country, improve the competitiveness of the domestic economy, improve the country's human capital, strengthen the national institution responsible for safety and justice, and reduce poverty and inequality, maintain fiscal prudence, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, restored hope in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 national budget stands at $781.9 billion and coincides with the theme, improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. The APNU AFC, Mr. Speaker, and I will want to ask your permission, Mr. Speaker, to give a synopsis of their track record. Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC legacy of moving Guyana backward did not start in 2015. It began much earlier. Since attaining a combined majority of 1 in the November 11 elections, The APNU-AFC weaponized the parliamentary process for selfish political gains at the expense of the Guyanese people's well-being. The APNU-AFC deliberately blocked 90 billion in programs designed by the PPPC government to benefit the Guyanese. Their goal was to weaken the ability of the PPPC government to deliver on its mandate while creating a political environment that fostered discontent among our people. As a political tactic, Mr. Speaker, they waged a campaign of misinformation in a calculated plan to design, distort, and obscure the truth. In 2015, Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC combined their operations and used their armory of tricks and deception to win political power with a parliamentary majority of one. Rather than progressing their menu of promises as outlined in their manifesto, they mismanaged the resources of Guyana, harmed our democracy through unilateral and unconstitutional actions, incompetently negotiated many state contracts, bungled by key investment opportunities, and in the process damaged prospects and the economic well-being of Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC suppressed the work of constitutional bodies such as the Integrity Commission and the Audit Office by reducing their budget and curtailing their independence. Through their actions, Mr. Speaker, they have been found to be the most incompetent government in our entire independent history. Mr. Speaker, one of their first acts of the APNU-AFC in office was to offer themselves and their inner cabal huge salary increases, leaving behind scores of nurses, teachers, members of the discipline services, and other workers. They promised to end expenditure wastage, but instead, Mr. Speaker, they more than double spending on international travel by an increase over $1 billion during their tenure. They spent over $2 billion on dietary supplies. They increased spending on security service by over $2 billion and rental and maintenance of buildings and equipment by over $3 billion. If that was not enough, Mr. Speaker, they then embarked on a program that ignored their 2015 manifesto promises and instead made ad hoc decisions to enrich themselves. Mr. Speaker, during their 2015 campaign, the APNUFC made several promises to the Amerindians, which included more jobs, improved health care, education, and the acceleration of the land titling program. Mr. Speaker, however, weeks after they took office, they fired 1,972 Amerindian community support officers and withdrew funds to finance the Amerindian community development plans. Shame. Who the cap fits, let them wear it, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, you have to withdraw shame.
I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they took away some 6,000 solar panel systems which were earmarked for Amerindian communities, dismantled the Amerindian land titling unit, and scuttled the Amerindian land titling project started by the PPPC government. Amerindian lives have changed for the worse under the APNU-AFC with increased taxes, VAT on hinterland fuel and travel, neglect of hinterland roads, shortages of medicine at health centers, and declining jobs. They have reduced Amerindian presence on the Amerindian People's Commission and attempted to weaken Amerindian rights through a revision of the Amerindian Act. Mr. Speaker, to add, the APNUAFC also established a commission of inquiry to investigate Amerindian lands, while one of their ministers, when they were in government, called the Amerindian people avaricious, and to this effect, they should not benefit from the proceeds of the oil and gas. However, Mr. Speaker, all of this, the APNU-AFC did to our Amerindian people. Mr. Speaker, We on this side of the house are building back the house, starting from the foundation with resilience, because we care for every citizen and the Amerindians are priority. Never again, and I ask my honorable members to say with me, never again, APNU, fool the Amerindian population, but we will never be fooled again. Mr. Speaker, I am not finished telling you about the horror story that the APNUFC were the authors of. They have failed the miners and loggers by imposing a tax on capital equipment, leaving hinterland roads in a state of collapse and not offering adequate security. The overall effect of such policy polarities on the part of the APNUFC caused a significant decline in economic activities in the country. Mr. Speaker, the APNUAFC discriminated against the business community by accepting transparent transactions, using political discretion to process incentives, disposing of state lands and other state assets, and procuring goods and services using secretive processes that were only available to business persons close to the APNU-AFC. Mr. Speaker, the APNU-AFC promised to increase investments, lower taxation, provide jobs, and stimulate wealth creation. Instead, Mr. Speaker, they increased taxes and fees, failed to attract new investments and created jobs, and there was a decumulation of wealth in Guyana. They have failed to offer a coherent plan to address these issues. Mr. Speaker, however, Budget 2023 gives every Guyanese a chance to good education, access good paying jobs, be able to start their own businesses, raise and provide for their family, own their own homes, live in a safe and secure environment, and retire with dignity. Budget 2023 gives every Guyanese full access to equal health care, safe water, the ability to participate in sports and recreation, and free practice of their religion and culture. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023, 41.4% larger than Budget 2022, is undoubtedly the largest budget and is fully financed with no new taxes. Budget 2023 is the first budget to benefit from the sale of Guyana's carbon credits, which will amount to 31.3 billion in revenue in 2023, alongside a transfer of 208.9 billion from the NRF to the consolidated fund this year. Budget 2023 strikes a balance between addressing pressing needs for today and the critical investments needed for tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, 3 billion in salary adjustments benefiting 5,000 healthcare workers and 9,000 members of the discipline services. Increase the monthly income tax threshold from 75,000 to 85,000 monthly, releasing a total of 3.3 billion into the hands of taxpayers and removing 12,000 taxpayers from the tax net. Mr. Speaker, the Because We Care cash grant from 25,000 to 35,000. This will benefit, Mr. Speaker, over 214 school children in public and private schools and will replace an additional of 2.1 billion in the hands of their parents. Mr. Speaker, 10 billion was allocated for the expansion of the part-time job, and we heard all sorts of comments about the part-time job. But Mr. Speaker, the opposition does not understand what the part-time job is. 5 billion allocated for an additional cost of living measures to be determined from the ongoing community engagements. So, Mr. Speaker, we're moving with increase of the old age pension from 28,000 to 33,000, placing an additional of 4.4 billion of disposable income in the hands of 73,000 pensioners in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the increase of public assistance from 14,000 to 16,000 to benefit 29,000 persons, and this will place 700 million of disposable income to these individuals. Mr. Speaker, 1.88 billion to commence rehabilitation, expansion, and reconstruction of the Georgetown, New Amsterdam, and Linden hospitals, as well as 4 telemedicine centers in regions 1, 7, 8, and 9. 830 million to complete the design and commence construction of the Bartica Regional Hospital. 1 billion to retrofit and upgrade health centers, health posts, and other facilities across the country. 237 million to upgrade Karasabay, Anai, and Sand Creek health centers into district hospitals providing radiology and laboratory services in Region 9. 2.5 billion for purchases of medical and non-medical equipment in 2023 across all 10 administrative regions of Guyana. Over 500 million for the training of health care professionals. More than 900 million to address non-communicable diseases, including mental health. I'm sorry the opposition is not here. I think this, Mr. Speaker, would have been good for them to benefit from. Mr. Speaker, in 2023, a sum of 94.4 billion has been allocated to further improve access to and the quality of education for all Guyanese. 1.4 billion to further upgrade and extend water supply systems and construct wells in several hinterland communities of regions 1, 2, 7, 8, and 9. 100 million to support activities associated with observance of International Decade for People of African Descent. Also, Mr. Speaker, there is an allocation for the support of the office of the Leader of the Opposition.
Before you go on to any other, you'd need an extension, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask for an extension for my colleague to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, honorable member. You have 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Amerindian and hinterland development. The PPPC government's commitment following its manifesto promises results in the prioritization of the Guyana's first people's education, health, housing, infrastructure, social well-being, employment, youth development, and development of the village economy. 4.7 billion allocated for Amerindian development programs and initiatives. Mr. Speaker, do you want to hear more? Here is more. Mr. Speaker, 2.7 billion budgeted for the Amerindian Development Fund. 233 Amerindian communities will positively benefit from this allocation. 5 billion for hinterland road development. 500 million to advance Amerindian land titling activities to safeguard and improve the security of land tenure enjoyed by Guyana's indigenous people. 124 million for the celebration of Amerindian heritage in 2023. Mr. Speaker, this budget is a people's budget. 91.8 million for the National Two Shows Conference. 500 million for the construction and equipment of ITC hubs in Amerindian villages. Mr. Speaker, the indigenous people will be forefront to directly benefit from the PPPC government's effort on climate change finance, with 15% of revenue received from the sale of carbon credits going towards investment in Amerindian village sustainability plans produced by villages and communities. Mr. Speaker, to every Guyanese, a hope that all our people will prosper and all our people will have an improvement in their lives. Mr. Speaker, it is with this hope that will drive us along the dream that we will see every Guyanese accomplishing their ambition right here in their homeland, Guyana. Mr. Speaker, together we will, as a people, Together we must as a people. Together we will move Guyana. This as one Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I commend Budget 2023 to this House for passage, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, Mr. Charlie. And the next presenter is the Honorable Member, Ms. Maureen, Philadelphia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, as I rise to make my contribution to Budget 2023, I must first say a heartfelt gratitude to the personnel of the Ministry of Finance that would have worked tirelessly to complete the document for its presentation in this noble House. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 was delivered to this nation on January 16th under the theme, Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow, albeit an oxymoron. I wonder what must have been the thoughts of right-thinking Guyanese, including you, Mr. Speaker, and all the honorable members on the other side, when a mere 10 days before its presentation, in excess of 50 Guyanese were made homeless. About improving lives of people today, and of course, shouting one Guyana mantra. Further, Mr. Speaker, as if that was not enough, Ms. Ellis was dismissed from her place of employment, making her both homeless and jobless. And to compound this situation, Mr. Speaker, a 2-year-old child is affected. Sir, unconscionable and heartless. Then the same people are touting one Guyana mantra. When we continue to see the marginalization of the people, even a kiss don't demonstrate love. Let us ask Jesus Christ, who was Judas. The squatters of Pigeon Island were not treated as refugees. They were given $80 million, and of course, titles will be awarded for the land they're occupying. I warned the famous civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Beware, the coalition will be back, and Guyanese will once again be treated with dignity and respect. This budget is the largest in 4 years in oil-rich Guyana, with a total of $781.9 billion. While the increased threshold is now $85,000, $10,000 increase, it is woefully inadequate to cushion the high cost of living with this Olympic running prices increase. Mr. Speaker, region number 4 budget was hijacked in 2020. This hijack took place even though elected officials tried feverishly to make their input in representing the people they swore to serve. And we continuously communities, Mr. Speaker, sir, here we have what Nabaklis Road looks like, and I can make them available to you. I have quite a lot here that you can see. Sir, I want to tell you, sir, Nabaklis Public Road. I want to tell you, sir, this road is referred to as Nabaklis Middle Walk. Yes, the same road Honorable Zulfikar used to visit to talk with the farmer. Over 6,000 residents use this road, but shamingly, the dictator instructed For, Mr. Speaker, this piece of road in Coventry that houses only 2 families to be given priority. Even the dogs make use of that road. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, none of the road in the backlist is worthy. Even the bridges, Mr. Speaker, are very deplorable. And like I said before, I have them all here. I would lay it over. Mr. Speaker, Gladys could not access our home. Am I to understand this is the land of the forgotten? I guess not. I beg that residents can breathe fresh. Ms. Veronica Andrews died and the taxi could not get to the area because of the state of the road. The ambulance did not get there on time, and Mr. Speaker, further, I give you some highlight. This is one of Victoria East sideline. Mr. Speaker, I have here the condition. You again, Mr. Speaker, here, Mr. Speaker, is the condition of some of the roads in Buxton. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? Haslington Block 20 Housing Scheme Network, as all of the roads are in deplorable state. I refer to them as Pacific Ocean and Mediterranean Sea. And while I speak, Mr. Speaker, I remember and I want to talk about Beirut. The Honorable Deodat Indar visited and promised the people in that area to give them bridges and roads. It has been 9 months thereafter, and nothing they have received. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, on the 5th of September this year, 5th of September last year, Beirut was plagued with a freak storm. I have something here to show you what was left of the home of 5 of the residents there, Mr. Speaker. I wept for a young couple. The mother is pregnant and has 2 school-age children. This is, of course, the home were destroyed. All was left is just the floor. Mr. Speaker, I challenge the men on mission to reach out and touch. But, Mr. Speaker, you know what? I can make comparison as I move along as to the condition of the roads that exist in other communities. Those I speak of, Mr. Speaker, are communities like Lusignan, Enmore, Enterprise, just to name a few. Of course, but while contracts are awarded and these communities are enhanced, these contracts are given to friends, favorites, and less than 72 hours, they begin to crumble. Green and red villages. Of course, the word shame is unparliamentary, so I will not use that word. I commend the coalition government for the sterling work they have started in preparing titles for the residents of Beirut, which this Jesus Christ superstar, when that community was developed under the PPPC over 2 decades ago. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, under 6211, $21,320,000 was requested. A paltry sum of $18,230,000 was received. This year, 36 million was requested again. Only 26.2 was allocated. How can the office function effectively? How, Honorable Dharamlal? I say, color of your heart, paint. I trust that your heart can speak to you, honorable member, and that the Gaffurs has it in stock so you can purchase. That 6211 is the council's budget, and when it is treated this way, the constituencies suffer. All Guyanese must be comfortable when the continuous discriminatory and dictatorial there were budget discussions, sir, this year, we still see the shameless act based on what was
After you reminded yourself skillfully navigating that.
withdraw with your guidance, sir. More only 9 were catered for in this mass budget of the Cooperative Oil Republic of Guyana. Sir, while I commend the Minister of Education with her sterling contribution, I must admit that some parts were riddled with inaccuracy, of which I'm going to address shortly. In 2022, $72.8 billion was received towards world-class education in Guyana. So, secondary could not have been completed then, but years later, I recall in 2021 when I questioned the honorable member, she said, yet here and now, school is now being completed. Further to that, Mr. Chairman, the honorable member mentioned that no school was built, whether started or completed, under the APNU. May I remind the honorable member, Mr. Speaker, that as I stand here, I'm heading one of Guyana premier nursery institutions was built under the APNU AFC government. I further say, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Eastville Secondary School, Eastville Nursery School was constructed, Good Hope Nursery School was constructed, and of course, I can recall Christianburg Primary School was under construction. The minister said, no, not one, and so I beg to correct that anomaly. I want to ask, is this how we want to cater for education? Honorable Manichan for the states. Honorable Manichan for the state, Mr. Goods and services and ensure that all institutions benefit from there. But I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that schools are starved of textbooks and other accessories, coupled with flooding and infrastructural deficiencies, not limited to electrical, plumbing, and other statics. In 2023, Mr. Speaker, a whopping $94.4 billion has been allocated to education. I trust that the deficiencies mentioned above are catered for. Mr. Speaker, I further want to remember what was said by the Honorable Priya Manichan, how much monies are spent to ensure that SEN education is adequately catered for, but yet too many buses that was requested by Region 4 to take our SEN learners to and from school was denied. Again, minibuses requested to ensure that our learners on the highway get to and from school. Again, that was denied. Additionally, Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I am proud of the legacy of the coalition. We said it and we proved it. Bus, boats, bicycles, and breakfast. School attendance and school performance improved as a result of initiatives such as the public education and transportation system, which was aimed at combating high truancy and dropout rates by providing same. Mr. Speaker, there should be support for us at-risk students, programs that provide targeted support for at-risk students, such as those living in poverty or experiencing behavioral or emotional difficulties, can help to keep these students in school. Mr. Speaker, as I speak, I saw a breakaway at one of our premier secondary school.
Let's take a breakaway now and ask for a suspension. Sorry, an extension for you to conclude.
Suspension. Thank you, Comrade Speaker. Comrade Speaker, I beg that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. Honourable member, you may continue to conclude in 5 minutes.
Sir, these should include counseling, academic support, and extracurricular activities. Sir, I know that the ministry would have introduced the guidance and counseling in secondary schools, but it is woefully inadequate. Sir, we were deliberate in developing our human resources with the construction of technical and vocational education and training hubs at Bina Hill, Madhya, Letem, and Mabura to bridge the gap between interland and coastland while enhancing interland access to post-secondary education. Sir, the poor and vulnerable will not benefit from this budget in its current form. Nothing suggests that the village economy will begin to grow and people's lives will be impacted. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I remind us of the words of reggae legend Buju Banton's song, Untold Stories. I am living while I'm living, to the Father I will pray. Only Him know how we get through every day. With all the hikes in the price, arm and leg we have to pay, while our leaders play. Who can afford to run will run, but what about those who can't? They will have to stay. I say to my Guyanese, hold the strain, change will come. As a result, Mr. Speaker, as a result of this, sir, I cannot support this budget in this form.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And now for the Honourable Member, Mr. Sipal Narain.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to have this opportunity to speak the budget 2023. Indeed, the budget, when implemented, will take us further down the developmental path and bring us closer to our national goals. Budget 2023 envisages a steadily developing country where our people live in a cohesive and modern society, where their dreams are made possible, and where families can make meaningful contributions to our country. These, Mr. Speaker, I see as the lofty ideals Budget 2023 is set against as we strive for equality and ensure the fruits of development are shared by everyone. As I've listened to the debate and comments outside of this August House, Mr. Speaker, I've come to two realizations. One, Mr. Speaker, the APNU and the AFC, since the budget presentation, have not advanced anything meaningfully. Several presenters from that side of the House, rather than constructive submissions, have resorted to divisive rhetoric. Mr. Speaker, I understand the opposition excluding, of course, the Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, apart from the depression of divorce, they have nothing to say. Maybe it is as Vice President Dr. Barajagdeo said, they do not understand the construct of Budget 2023. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the honorable members on that side of the House to enjoin the government in advancing a program benefiting all Guyanese. But I wonder, is the opposition really committed to nation building, or is it all huff and puff? Secondly, Mr. Speaker, these debates articulate policies and measures advanced in Budget 2023. Though we may be distracted by the spuriousness emanating from the now divorced coalition, I do not believe, Mr. Speaker, our Guyanese brothers and sisters can fully grasp from these exchanges what is in store for them. Indeed, Budget 2023 is wide-ranging and comprehensive. And as I commend it, I am confident that the government, after we wrap up our debate, will continue to lay out the budget's plans and programs. Our Guyanese family, as His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali puts it, must know what their government has in store for them. Budget 2023 has been hailed, Mr. Speaker, as history-making and transformative. This year's budget is our nation's largest and will redouble efforts to enhance our people's welfare. Moreover, the plans of the budget will hasten the transformative agenda and reshape our landscape. Budget 2023 brings the Guyanese working man and woman closer to their aspirations. It makes the dream of home ownership easier and affordable. It demolishes the concept that owning a motor vehicle is a luxury, and at the same time, it puts more money into the hands of our workers with no new taxes. For me, Mr. Speaker, this is what makes Budget 2023 history-making and transformative. Never in our history was it so exciting to be a Guyanese. Never there was so much to expect, and never was there such national pride. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it is almost unbelievable to recognize that in such a short period, the Irfan Ali-led government has reversed our nation from the lethargy that characterized our national space during the 5 years of the coalition. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 allocates a significant sum of its expenditure towards the social sectors. Such investments have been a hallmark of every PPPC government. The PPP since its foundation has always been a pro-people, pro-development party committed to improving the lives of our people. Past and present PPPC governments, investments in education, health, water, housing, and social services not only protect our Guyanese family today, but ensure that tomorrow and the days after are bright, fruitful, and prosperous. Budget 2023, welcoming, continues and expands on that proud path and placing our people's well-being as its center. Mr. Speaker, 2023 has earmarked almost $95 billion for the education sector. Today, the aspirations of our nation's children are no longer confined to their dreams. In the sector, I recognize the expansion of infrastructure alongside enhanced capacity and capabilities. These investments bode well for our nation's children. That apart, the opportunities to attain a university education has been enhanced through investments in the University of Guyana and the Gold Program. Emphasis on expanding technical and vocational education to expand our pool of artisans is also helping to mold our nation. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, enhancements in healthcare are assured as several new hospitals are under construction. I recognize too the emphasis on strengthening and improving our capabilities as the sector in an upward trajectory. This is a far cry from the days of the infamous condom bond. Budget 2023 also provides more breathing and greater opportunities for our healthcare professionals. Likewise, expenditure to expand the provision of treated water is laudable. We are told very soon most citizens will benefit from fully treated water. Given the rundown state of the water company in 2020, this is a remarkable achievement and a reminder of the government's commitment to bettering the lives of our people. In housing, substantial sums have been allocated. Indeed, the demand is significant, as the former coalition government really did nothing when in office. But our comrades in that sector are not daunted, and unlike their predecessors, are hard at work, expanding our housing stock. Indeed, the dream of home ownership has been and is being realized by thousands of Guyanese under the PPPC. The continuing and expanding support to our poor and vulnerable must also attract our appreciation. Mr. Speaker, today, the helping hand of the state remains a source of comfort for many of our Guyanese brothers and sisters. I'm fortified in my belief that President Ali and his government in the coming years will ensure that such assistance is expanded. Comrade Speaker, I also paid keen attention to what Budget 2023 has for our workers. And I must say that me nor the working class are disappointed. Mr. Speaker, our workers stand to receive aggregately more than $3 billion just through the improvement of the income tax threshold. And that's only one policy. In the interest of the workers too, our government, this PPPC government, has continued not to levy any taxes on fuel, foregoing some $17 billion in revenue. Additionally, reduction in freight charges for imports is meaningfully assisting in mitigating the rising cost of living. And financial support to both the GPL and GWI to maintain electricity and water tariffs represents significant support to the working class. Since the presentation of budget, I have seen in the media and elsewhere some wild statements by honorable members of the divorce coalition. They have short memory. Just a few years ago, Guyanese had to pay taxes on water and electricity. Our children had to pay VAT to go to school. And when we visited the hospitals, taxes were charged, as well as a host of others hikes. Today, Mr. Speaker, the Irfan government has removed those burdens from the backs of the working class, placing a substantial sum of monies in the pockets of our working people. Today, Mr. Speaker, it is the PPPC which is giving and not taking from our workers. And today, Mr. Speaker, it is this government which is chartering a prosperous course for all Guyana. Mr. Speaker, while our colleagues from the coalition may want to mouth off, their records of destruction speaks loudly. It is chalk to cheese when compared to what the PPPC has done in a relatively short period of time. Mr. Speaker, as someone very close to the sugar industry, I laud the budget's allocation of $4 billion to the Guyana Sugar Corporation, Inc., GAISUCU. This support will continue the effort of repairing the purposeful and vindictive damage inflicted by the APNU AFC when in government. The reorientation of the industry is moving at a pace, and I recognize the efforts to improve revenues, enhance efficiency, and reduce costs. The expansion of the packaging plant at Blemont and the construction of a new plant at Albion will undoubtedly enhance the industry's march to sustainability. Packet sugar, Mr. Speaker, is sold higher than what is obtained from raw bulk sugar. I am aware that the industry has secure markets in several countries, however, is limited by its packaging capacity. This is welcoming news, Mr. Speaker, and is an indicator that we are moving in the right direction. The efforts to enhance mechanization also present greater opportunities to improve productivity and efficiency. I'm certain that these investments will pay dividends several times over and redound to the industry's performance. On sugar, Mr. Speaker, I saw opposition member, the Honorable Amanza Walton Desir, saying in a news report that the investment in the sugar industry was throwing monies into a black hole. And the Honorable Ramjatan said bad investment, and its colleagues in the APNU AFC right-sized the industry. Mr. Speaker, it was the same Ramjatan honorable member and the infamous Nimakaram who promised the sugar workers 20% increase, and during their term of government, not a cent, and dismissed 7,000 workers under the guise of right size. It was the same Honorable Ramjatan when he was vice president who refused to have an impact assessment study done. And Mr. Chairman, Comrade Speaker, it can only take evil people to commit the acts that they have committed against those poor workers. Mr. Speaker, this naked, undisguised insult to sugar workers and all our people in the sugar belt must not be tolerated. It has no place in our society. Does the honorable members, and for that matter, the wider APNU and AFC, have no care or regard for the thousands who depend on the industry? Or is it that those in the sugar belt are lesser morals, destined to some inhumane existence? Mr. Speaker, it is unacceptable that such derogatory sentiments could come from the opposition, excluding, of course, the Deputy Speaker.
At this time, we will need an extension for you to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask that my colleague be given additional time to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Member, you may continue
Thank
to
you,
conclude in 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is it It is unacceptable that such derogatory sentiments could come from the opposition, especially when they are aware of the painful consequences of their callous decision when in government that caused tens of thousands in the sugar belt to be pushed into a miserable existence. But let it be known, Mr. Speaker, every insult against the sugar workers, some who are supporters of the APNU, would be a nail in the coffin of the AFC APNU. Their time in the opposition would be extended as fresh smoke rise from the chimneys of Rosal Estate and life flourishes again in the sugar belt under this PPPC government with provisions in our 2023 budget. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable Minister Dr. Ashni Singh and his team at the Ministry of Finance. I also recognize the leadership of President Dr. Irfan Ali, Vice President Dr. Bara Jagdeo, and the Cabinet in developing and advancing a budget for the people. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 will advance the well-being, welfare, and standard of living of all our people. It places Guyana further along the journey of prosperity, and it brings one's dreams into reality for thousands of people. Budget 2023 consolidates the achievements since the PPPC re-entry into office in 2020. It represents a continuation of the party's contract with the Guyanese people, and it is a tangible manifestation of the Guyana we yearn for. Mr. Speaker, I commend once again Budget 2023 and encourage all Guyanese, our family, to reject the narrow and divisive diatribe coming from the APNU AFC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Member, Ms. Sheila Virasamy, to conclude tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the onset, I would like to congratulate my colleague and comrade, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh, Senior Minister in the Office of the President, with responsibility for finance, for bringing to this House the most transformative and people-centered budget. You, my comrade, continues to amaze Guyanese with your eloquence and the way you captured and offer resolutions to the issues affecting them. You presented a budget by the PPP Civic that is based on the PPP Civic Manifesto, and you also include His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Irfan Ali's vision for one Guyana. Thank you, comrade. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the hardworking staff at the Ministry of Finance and all government agencies who contributed to the preparation of Budget 2023 under the theme, Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to clarify a few issues raised in this House by members of the opposition. Sir, I would like to state that no amount of spinning of the truth with a web of lies will change the reality of this budget.
You have to withdraw lies. Yeah, but I asked that you withdraw lies. I didn't hear that.
This budget is for all people, and it will begin the transformation of Guyana into a modern country. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 focuses on people, infrastructural enhancement, and economic diversification. The transformation plan outline aims at improving the lives of everyone, all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker,
We understand that this is a debate, and in every debate, there is a proposition and an opposition. And the responsibility of the opposition is to destroy the credibility of the proposition. Well, sir, we are not here to be destroyed. We are here to inform the Guyanese and correct all the distortions. Sir, our Guyanese sisters and brothers are smart people. They know that this budget was prepared with them in mind. They know that this budget was prepared with them to give them a future that they all deserve. They know that the PPP civic government is serving their interests. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to forge ahead to improve our people's lives, the infrastructure, to diversify this economy, to strengthen our legislative system, and to improve our services across Guyana. Sir, economic growth and development will directly improve people's socioeconomic and psychosocial well-being. We will build a Guyana that will be admired by all, while we maintain our cherished Guyanese hospitality. Mr. Speaker, to drive the transformation projects outlined in the budget, Guyana needs a workforce that is educated and skilled. This workforce will build the one Guyana envisioned. This workforce will be created through the Gold Scholarships, the Board of Industrial Training that they do, the more than a dozen of courses, the WIN training program. Of course, we have the University of Guyana, the premier tertiary educational facility, and the numerous educational institutions around Guyana. But I refer to the above three because they are fully financed by the government of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the larger percentage of the Gold Scholarship beneficiaries are women, and the WIN program also caters to the need of mostly women, while BIT focuses on improving the skills of the youths, including young women. Mr. Speaker, this budget is gender-focused and gender-sensitive. Mr. Speaker, the projected infrastructural expansion and beautification of our country will amaze all. We cannot continue to be wowed by other people's country. We have to work together to make Guyana into the paradise it can be. Mr. Speaker, do you remember why we are lagging behind other parts of the world? It is because of what the PNC did to us for 28 years between 1964 and 1992. It was their mismanagement, rigged elections, starvation, and bankrupt policies that stymied Guyana's economic growth and development. Those same bankrupt ideas were exhibited between 2015 and 2020 that resulted in the economy contracting and people were kicked out of their jobs. And imagine, on top of all of that, the increased taxation. That pushed our people further or backwards into impoverishment. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Finance outlined numerous infrastructural projects, which includes the four-lane Demerara Harbor Bridge, the highway from Ogle to Eccles, the many hinterland bridges, the farm-to-market roads, highways, the refurbishment of community roads and bridges, not forgetting gas-to-shore project. Sir, these projects will contribute to improving people's lives and save them time and money. Good roads will get people from one place to another in a shorter span of time. Mr. Speaker, the developmental projects outlined will create jobs and put billions of dollars in disposable income into the pockets of working-class Guyanese. And sir, when money goes into family, women benefits, children benefits, elders benefits. Mr. Speaker, allow me to deviate for a minute. Sir, let me remind you how taxpayers' money was spent by the coalition while in government between 2015 and 2020. Remember the drug bonds, sir? Only two I will remind you of. A small house they rented from one of their allies and paid $12.5 million per month in rent. Can you remember the $1+ billion that was spent to build the Durban Park Stadium that now houses vagrants? Can you remember the $600 million that the Auditor General said that could not be accounted for? Sir, We can spend the rest of the night here and debate APNU AFC incompetence and how they squander the money of the taxpayers while they were in office. Mr. Speaker, APNU AFC coalition laments that 2023 budget has nothing for workers or Guyanese. Let me remind ourselves of the APNU AFC salary increases paid to public servants between 2015 and 2020. Sir, public servants know that the salary increases they were given during 2015-2020 was a sham. Mr. Speaker, they were more impoverished and mothers had a difficult time providing for their children. Ask mothers about the 10,000 because we care cash grant that it took away from our children. And Mr. Speaker, they had the audacity to impose 14% VAT or taxes on school items, medical supplies, and food items. Ask elders and they will tell you how they were affected when the water subsidy, when the subsidy for electricity and water was taken away. Ask elders how they felt when the VAT was imposed on those very utilities, including internet, food, and medical supplies. AFC gave openly, then stealthily took it away in taxes from our people. Mr. Speaker, let us talk about the PPP civic government, what it has done in the last 2.5 years for our people in relation to salaries and the billions of dollars in disposable income that have been put into the pockets of our people. Firstly, no taxes were imposed on our people in the last 4 budgets. VAT was removed from food items, school supplies, medical items, medication, machineries, equipments, and the latest one, sir, VAT was removed from housing materials. We have a housing boom in this country, and this is a very welcome initiative. Sir, VAT was removed from water and electricity and internet. Several taxes were restored to 2015 levels. Land rents in MMA was restored to 2015 levels. And sir, in 2022, income tax threshold was raised from 65 to 75,000. And this year, it was raised from 75 to 85,000. When we raise the tax threshold, sir, we like to be silent and we like to criticize. But this tax threshold put, no matter how small amount, it has put some money in the pockets of our workers. In 2021, over 50,000 public servants, teachers, members of the disciplinary services, and government pensioners received 7% retroactive salary to January. You come here every single year, you criticize the budget of not raising salary, but you know what? We give increased salaries at the end of the year, and women can take that money and go and buy a hell of a lot of things and give it to their families. Sir, in 2022, approximately 52,000 of those workers were given increase in salaries of 8% retroactive to January. Sir, in December 2022, President Ali announced major salary increases for doctors, nurses, and health workers, law enforcement officers, and military personnel. They were also given a one-off cash grant, military personnel, at the end of the last year. Sir, increased salaries for that level of workers is a manifesto promise kept. In 2020, household received $25,000 COVID cash grant, and all frontline workers received COVID-19 packages in their salaries. This continued in 2021, and our hinterland sisters and brothers also benefited. Mr. Speaker, you are aware of the stimulus packages or cash grants that were given to our people, sugar workers, fishermen, children with disability, etc., to help them with poverty alleviation. Mr. Speaker, can you remember the APNU AFC promise of a good life to Guyanese between 2015 to about 2018? Can you remember that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, changed his narrative in 2019 budget when he said his government never promised a good life in the first 5 years? Well, all of us probably were hearing a different music. Sir, can you remember that can you remember the slogan of a good life that was accompanied by the slogan of this is our time? Sir, it was this kind of false promises that caused the voters to cast them aside in 2020 and democracy was restored in August 2020 after 5 long months of APNU AFC varied attempts of rigging the March 2020 elections. But sir, they forgot one very, very important thing. This is not 1964 to 1992. This is an era of social media, internet, science, and technology. In this era, our people are educated, they listen, assimilate, rationalize, and more, they read and they observe. Experience became their greatest teacher, and they know that all they received from APNU AFC between 2015 2020 was is a promise of a good life that became a good lie. Sir, we in the PPP Civic do not make empty promises. Our manifesto promises were carefully considered to guarantee maximum benefits for all. Now it is implementation time. And sir, we are known for not breaking promises, and we are known to work hard to defend democracy, and we will build a prosperous Guyana for all to enjoy. Mr. Speaker, people are living healthier lives today because of the vast improvements in medical science and because of the increased number of doctors available to patients and to improve their lives. Sir, the PPP civic government, from 100 and something doctors, we have about 1,500 doctors across this country. That is a very, very important point to note. And this is something the opposition benches, the honorable members on the opposition benches seems to forget. Sir, to guarantee and improve healthcare systems, hospital and health centers will be equipped with modern amenities, trained staff, and improved services. This is a welcome initiative in rural and hinterland communities. Sir, every district across Guyana has healthcare system, and hinterland communities have health outposts, health workers, and medics. Further, health centers across Guyana have doctors, and most have pharmacies, and many are moving to provide labs so that patients do not have to travel to main hospitals to get their blood work done while being ill. Sir, we promised improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. Sir, this is what we mean. Reducing maternal death, improving antenatal care, building new hospitals in rural communities, and equipping them with human and technical resources, improving diagnostic capabilities, and bringing health care closer to home. Mr. Speaker, to reduce and eliminate maternal deaths and child mortality, the new state-of-the-art hospital is a dream come true for expectant mothers. This hospital is a direct benefit for our women. 2023 budget is a promise made and a promise kept.
Honorable member, this is a good time to seek an extension for you so that you can conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that my colleague be given additional time to complete her presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable member, you have 5 minutes to conclude your
Mr.
presentation.
Speaker, 8,000 of the 20,000 house lots allocated in the last 2 years were allocated to women. Sir, we have done a fantastic job of ensuring that households have access to potable water, and we will be spending the next couple of years to work on ensuring that households receive treated water. Sir, in the 1970s and 80s, the older comrades or the older persons in this house will remember that women used to have to walk miles away from their homes to fetch a bucket of water to give their family to drink. Now, that time is spent with their children and with their family. Quality time, sir, is diverted elsewhere. Gold scholarships, sir. As promised, 14,000 of the 20,000 scholarships were awarded. And guess what, sir? About 60% of those are given to women because the women are coming forward and applying for the scholarship, right? Yeah. So imagine that, sir. This budget, and the opposition is saying this budget has nothing for people. It boggles one's mind to understand where they're coming from. Can you remember, sir, that in the 1970s and 80s, many girl children could not have access to tertiary education? It was because, sir, of the compulsory national service. Well, sir, gold scholarship doesn't tie anybody to anything. Imagine how far we have moved ahead. We are building, sir, an educated nation that will take Guyana from where it is to where it's supposed to be. Sir, parents of almost 200,000 children are waiting anxiously for the Because We Care and Uniform Cash Grant of $40,000. One of my staff, sir, came to me and said, Ms. Versami, is it true I'm going to be getting $40,000 for my children? You mean this year I don't have to spend a cent from my pocket to buy school things for them? I said, yes. Comrade, y'all didn't give them a cent. Y'all took it away. Sir, even children in private schools are receiving the same benefit. Sir, not like the David G. buses, boats, bags, boots, bicycle program that benefited the children of certain communities. Sir, this budget has allocated funds to ensure that 85,000 children benefiting from the school feeding program. Sir, when parents don't have to provide meals for their children, monies remain in their pocket to do something else. Sir, the WIN program is working excellently, reaching out to women and girls across Guyana. More than 8,500 women and a few men were trained in the last 2 years. And sir, I had called out the ministers of the coalition while we were in opposition, telling them, encouraging them to use the institution to educate our girls. Sir, we are back on par. Thank you, Dr. Vindhya Prasad. Old age pension. We decry the monies given to old age pensioners. Well, sir, old age pensioners are not only given $5,000 in increase, their VAT was removed from those utilities, and guess what? Water subsidy was given back to them. Sir, children up to 18 years old receive that cash grant. But sir, that is not enough. Those children are going to be put on a fixed establishment where they will be given that public assistance. And sir, over the years, public assistance will continue to grow, and parents are going to get more help for them. Sir, under the coalition, one could not access wheelchair. Just one more point, sir. Under the coalition, parents could not have access wheelchair for their children or their family members. This has been remedied by the PPP civic government. No one will go without a wheelchair, a walker, or a walking stick. We must respect the people who are suffering from disability. Sir, I commend this budget for approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, we have completed our business for today. I now call on the Acting Prime Minister, the Honorable Member Anil Nandalal,
Thank
to
you,
move the
sir.
adjournment.
Sir, I move the adjournment of the Assembly to tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for continuation.
Thank you, honorable members. We are now adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.